All right, welcome back to another live. I'm your host, Joseph Lewin. And who doesn't want to make more money? I mean, really, who doesn't want to be able to sell to higher paying clients? Or if you're you're a financial advisor or you're in that space, who doesn't want to sell to higher net worth people? So if you're in any kind of consultative selling, you're definitely going to want to tune in because I have an absolute expert, Derek Kinney, on today to talk about how you can use conversation and it really just change the way that you talk and the way you present yourself to be able to sell more and to sell to higher net worth people, or to, if you're in the consulting space or you sell some kind of coaching, sell to higher end clients. And so as I've gotten to know Derek a little bit and look through his content, I know that this is super relevant to the kinds of people that I typically work with and interact with. So Derek, super excited to learn from you today.
Thank you, Joseph. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
Awesome. Yeah. So I wanted to kick it off because, I feel like when you get into the space where you're selling to high net worth people, or you're selling to, bigger companies and you're asking for a lot of money, people get very intimidated. And there seems to be this kind of aura around people who are super good at selling in these places. And then there's a lot of people who just never have had the experience or the training to get there. And so it can feel very unattainable, and it feels like, oh, I just don't, it's something that I just don't have. And there's other people who are naturally good at this. But I know that you have some really practical mistakes that people make, but also things they can do to avoid those that can really help them sell. So what do you think the biggest sales mistakes people make that are really just pushing away high net worth people?
Well, real quickly, let me tell you a story. And it was basically a mistake that I made that I learned from. So I was 26 years old, a brand new financial advisor, but I had a big problem. I looked like I was 13. No gray hair, no wrinkles. And I really internalized who's going to work with a young guy like me. And so the mistake I made is when I would be in these social settings, I would oversell myself, trying to make myself into be the smartest person in the room. I would talk about our product and services, features and benefits, and all the nuances and all the things that we could offer people. And you could just see people's eyes glazing over. It was like they were going comatose right in front of me. And I thought, something is wrong here, because I knew I was 26. They knew I was 26, and they're wondering, what does this young guy know? And when you oversell, it basically makes you out of the room. I mean, people write you off. And so what I realized was, wait a minute, I need to connect with a relatable problem. And so what I learned was that if you want to make it rain, connect with pain. So let me give you an example. Joseph, let's say that you and I are talking, and I say to you, Joseph, you know how it feels like when you take your car to the mechanic? It feels like you're getting overcharged or taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your response right there was instant. Big smile. It was like, yes. So that required no brain cell burn on your part to understand the point I was making. It was an instantly relatable problem you connected with. So here's another example. Let's say that two dads, or let's just say two moms, are talking to each other, and they each have a teenage daughter. And one mom says to the other mom, you know how it feels like when you talk to your teenage daughter, what you say goes in one ear and out the other, and she gives you the eye roll? How will the mom react?
Of course.
Of course. It's like, yes, I can immediately relate to that.
See it every day.
Every day. And so the point is, financial advisors, consultative salespeople, anybody who sells face to face, eyeball to eyeball, the biggest mistake they make is trying to sell their product as the solution to the problem. Instead, what they want to do is connection is the solution to the problem. When I can state something in a way that instantly relates to the person, where they say, yes, you get me, like talking to you about the car or the teenage daughter, you're like, oh my gosh, yes. So here's a practical example. Let's say for those advisors listening, for example, I might say to someone when they ask me, hey, Derek, what do you do for a living? And I always lead in with a you know how statement. Well, you know how so many people worry about running out of money in retirement? Or you might say to somebody that you're looking to sell a big piece of equipment to, you know, so many people worry about getting taken advantage of, and and like they're going to have a sale made and then the person leaves and then they're left on their own. Yeah. So the point is you want to relate to this human emotive connection right off the bat for people to say, oh, this person gets me. They have no idea what you do. They just know that what you said are words they've thought themselves.
Yeah, I love that. Well, first of all, glazing is for donuts. And so if you're seeing that when you're in a sales
I
conversation,
love that.
you're in trouble. And talk about relatable. I've definitely been there, right? It's actually really interesting. I really appreciate what you're sharing because for the longest time, while I was especially getting into marketing, I had the same kind of experience as what you're talking about. Like I was young, I did spend a lot of time, and really, I would say became an expert. But then the people who would buy wouldn't listen to me, and I cared more about their problem and how to solve it and the right way to do it than they did. And then the more that I've been doing this, the more that I realize influence doesn't come from having the best idea or looking the smartest. It comes from building that connection. And you can do that on stage, but you could also do that in a one-on-one situation and gain influence. And it's interesting because I've always thought, people talk about telling stories all the time in marketing. And I've always thought, well, you got to tell this amazing story, something that's unique to you. But my friend Eva Daniel, she's amazing. She's a speech writer. I recently was in a class of hers and she said, if you can pick between the interesting story and the relatable story, always pick the relatable stories that you can tell. And what you're talking about lines up right with that. And even in the way that you shared everything you shared, I can relate to that because I've been there. And so you're obviously practicing exactly what you're preaching.
Well, it's interesting, and these are born out of my own mistakes. I would enter a room and I would feel overlooked, and it made me angry because I thought to myself, wait a minute, these are clients that I should be working with, but yet I saw other advisors. I'm a former financial advisor, sold my business after 25 years, but I was an advisor who realized, wait a minute, why are other advisors attracting these clients that I know are not as good as me? And it just made me angry. And what I realized is, look, I can't go over there and shake the prospect and say, look, you need to pay attention to me. It's all about words. Words
Mm.
equal wealth. And whether you choose to go face to face, which wins the race, or voice to voice, which is the best choice, or you want to do your lead development in LinkedIn, emails, ultimately, whatever lead source you're getting, ultimately, there comes that moment where human connection wins. You might
Yeah.
have a great lead, but if that person doesn't feel like to themselves, this person gets me, this person understands me, this person understands the problem I need to solve so I look good to my boss, you will not make that sale.
Yeah, that's huge too, because when we're talking about anytime somebody's going to spend a lot of money, it's either personal risk because it's their money or it's personal risk because it's their career on the line. And maybe if you're selling to the government, it might be a little bit different because those people don't have as much risk
That's
when they
right.
make a huge mistake. But that's for a different podcast. But if you're, in the normal working world, if you make a huge blunder by bringing in the wrong vendor, you could lose your job over that, right? And so in the back of everybody's mind, it's not just can this solution solve my problem? It's do I trust the person that I'm talking to that they're going to make sure that my needs are taken care of? And if you are only talking about solutions and benefits, especially if they're the same ones that everybody else and every financial advisor is only going to be able to do so much to make their solution stand out, right? And so then what's the difference? It's you. And so building that connection and building that trust is absolutely huge. So in order to have those conversations, you have to actually get the person to pay attention to you in the first place, right? And I feel like one big challenge, especially early on, is that you get the eye glaze basically from the moment you open your mouth, and then there's no opportunity to recover. Especially for people like that, a lot of times they make a snap judgment on somebody, and then it's really hard to recover from that. So, how do you get somebody to go from being ice cold to curious so that you actually get the opportunity to win them over?
Well, and that's a big concern people have. So, candidly speaking, the biggest fear I used to have in social settings was when people would ask me, what do you do for a living? Because I could predict, I'm going to say financial advisor, you might say salesperson, consultant, and you know how they're going to respond. And so I had to come up with something different. So let me give you a question here. Let's say that you're in a social setting in your hometown, a social event, and you've got your favorite beverage in your hand, and you're mingling around the room, and a gentleman walks up to you and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And you say, "Well, I'm a consultant." And he says, "Oh, okay, great." And you say, "Well, what do you do?" And he says, "Well, I'm a personal trainer. I put together workout and eating plans so people can live a better life." You say, "Oh, okay, great." Then you exchange a few more pleasantries and so forth. Well, you meet other people throughout the evening, but toward the end of the night, a woman approaches you and she says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And you say, "Well, I'm a consultant." She says, "Oh, okay, great." You say, "Well, what do you do?" She says, "Well, you know how busy business owners and entrepreneurs, they always put others' needs above their own, and their health often takes a toll? Well, I design custom tailored workout and eating plans that fit within their budget and their schedule so they can feel good, but most importantly, so they can look great. And so one day they can be the cool grandparent that has the energy to chase their grandkids across the floor. I specialize in personal training."
Hmm.
Pause. Let's say that a week goes by, Joseph, and after a big meal, you're looking in the mirror and you say to yourself, "You know what? I need a personal trainer." Which personal trainer would you call? Trainer number one that you talk to, or trainer number two?
Oh, definitely trainer number two.
And if I can put you on the spot, why would you pick trainer number two?
Because she's speaking to the actual pain, right? And the things that I might be experiencing. I mean, if I want a personal trainer, I'm going to have been experiencing those things. And really, I mean, who wants to hire a trainer or a coach or anything like that, right? You don't really want to do that, and so there's automatic. Or who wants to hire a financial advisor? Going back to that, it's like, well, I don't want to admit that I need a trainer or help, right? But if I have pain, then I'm really hiring them to help me solve that.
Yeah, and so exactly. And so what I would say to add to that would be both trainers are probably equally qualified, equally good. They probably get equal results, but one of them use their words in a way to connect instantly to a pain point that you had. And
Yeah.
they gave you a story that didn't require any brain cells to burn. It was just like, yeah, I do feel like I put others' needs above my own. I do want my health. I do want to be the cool grandparent that has the energy to chase my grandkid across the floor. All of those things I've thought. And so the person who can say what the person has already thought is the key to instant rapport. And what we
Mm.
find is then ideally what you want to do is then tell a story about, hey, let me share a quick story. I visited with a busy business owner recently, came in the office, doing
Mm.
very, very well, but they knew that they were spending their wealth and sacrificing their health. And
Yeah.
through our three-step plan, they found freedom, not only in eating better, but also they enjoyed life a lot better. And now they're actually making more money. Is that something you like our help with? Yeah. Well, see, now you've told a story, and people love to interject themselves into other people's stories.
Mm.
Ideally, it's a true story. And that way you can share with them, here's a real life what someone said about what we talked about. So the key is don't overcomplicate it. And the exercise I would give people, Joseph, is this: as you're listening and you finish this podcast, look at your past 5 clients. Let them be your focus group and ask yourself, of my past 5 clients, most recent 5, what problem did they come to me to solve? And that
Mm.
begins to bubble up. Okay, they wanted to save money. They want to look good to their boss. They want to make sure that they've got a program that's reliable. They don't want to be embarrassed. Whatever those problems are, you then begin to bubble that up and you begin to put that into your language and then test it and then see how people respond. And when
Mm.
you say, I call this your you know how statement, and what do you do for a living? Well, you know how so many purchasing managers, candidly, they worry about being embarrassed by making the wrong purchasing choice. We help them avoid embarrassment and actually be the hero by making smart purchasing decisions. Well, that's what I want. So whatever it may be, you're simply letting your past 5 tell you how to attract your next 5.
Yeah, and something I really love about what you're sharing, because I was in a role for a while, product marketing manager, and did a bunch of customer research. And um, since then, I've actually done a ton of customer research, and it's amazing what people will just tell you. But for some reason, companies, especially bigger companies, but even when you're an entrepreneur, it's so easy to get stuck in your own head and try to come up with these ideas in a vacuum and then push them into the market. And really, if I could summarize what I'm taking away from what you're saying, it's you can't come in assuming that you know all of the best solutions to a problem or whatever, and then trying to push that. Really, ultimately, you're looking for, what is the market saying? What am I hearing as a common theme that's pain that people are experiencing, and then how can I connect with them in an emotional way? And being real about it. We're not trying to trick people with that, but like, how do I connect with them on an emotional level with something they're already experiencing? And then you didn't use this word here, but I'm in your booklet, pretty sure you used the word prod there, pain. And so you're basically like pushing on that pain rather than coming in and saying, hey, here's what I do. Like the personal trainer jumped in and said, hey, I'm a personal trainer, and then they move on, right? Whereas the second one is prodding on pain. And then if the person has the pain, they're going to lean in, right, at that point, and they're going to be like, oh, wow, that's interesting. I haven't heard anybody say it that way before. And then you ask them some follow-up questions, and you learn a little bit more. And then a phrase that you used here that you also mentioned in your downloadable is basically, would it make sense to work together? I don't remember your exact phrasing, but like, how can I help? Or would you be interested in helping? What was your phrase for that?
Yeah. Is that something you'd like my help with?
Yeah, I love that, because I think that's another area where people struggle, because there tends to be the people who are kind of charismatic and outgoing, and they do some of the things you're talking about naturally. And I found that those people are great at selling. They're not always great at actually doing the thing. Whereas the people who are really great at doing the thing tend to do exactly what you said. I mean, and again, you're saying be relatable, and everything you're saying is relatable to me, because I've felt that exact way, where I've gotten frustrated and honestly jealous of people who I know can't actually deliver the thing that this person needs, but they charge a lot more and make a lot more money than I have, because they're connecting with that person on an emotional level. And I'm trying way too hard. I'm trying harder than the client to solve their own problem, right?
Yeah.
Rather than, just connecting with the pain, not overselling. And then, would you like my help solving that? That you're still actually asking for the sale, but you're not doing it in a way that's pushy. You're inviting them to invite you into the sales conversation. And if they go, yeah, you know what, I'm good, then you can leave it alone. But there's a good chance, if they have the pain, that they're going to go, oh my gosh, yeah, I am interested in talking with you about that.
Well, what's interesting, and so as you're talking, it reminds me of a story that happened this morning. So I recently ruptured a tendon in my finger. And so I got the splint off, and I went to physical therapy at the hospital this morning, just before we're having this conversation. And so this is one of my favorite Robert Graham shirts. Okay. So whenever I wear it, people say to me, hey, Derek, I like your shirt. Nice shirt. It just, for whatever reason, the colors of this shirt just bring that attention. So as I walk into the hospital, this way, a lady walks by, hey, nice shirt. I'm like, okay, cool. Then I walk down into the PT area, and the two ladies are like, whoa, cool shirt. Love your shirt, man. That's cool. And so it just validates, when I wear this shirt, people say they like it. And so there's a marketing lesson there. And that is, if people tell you, and it's more than one, ideally two or more people tell you something, it is true, whether it's good or bad. If my kids say to me, Dad, you never listen, you're always on your phone. And then another one of my kids says, Dad, you never listen. Well, that means that Dad never listens. I may not like it, I may not want to hear it, but that means it's true. Okay. But if two people say, hey, I like that shirt, that makes it true. And so you just want to follow the things that make it true. And so what clients tell you that you do, accept it as true. Don't do any additional extra research or have to do a ChatGPT search on what do my clients like. If your clients tell you, I like working with you because you negotiate prices for me. I feel like you give me the best price. I feel like you are always there when I need someone to take care of this problem. Well, that means you're reliable, you're price sensitive, you're price savvy. And so those are words that clients are telling you that you can then use in examples when you talk to people. And often it's best to say, it's funny, what do you do for a living? It's funny. I just talked to one of our clients and here's what they said that I do. So when you do
Mhm.
a third party explanation, it's even better because it's like, oh, that makes sense. Then it gives that person a realistic perspective on the value that you provide. So don't make it oversimplified. I mean, simplify it. Don't make it overly complicated. But and what I would tell you is the least amount of words wins. However, you can communicate the problem you solve and what you do for a living with the least amount of words so people can comprehend it at a third grade level, as crazy as that is, that's how you build initial connection and instant likability.
All right, I'm gonna ask you a question I didn't have written down because I think it's relevant. Was gonna ask you for practical steps, but this whole thing was practical, so I don't think we need to go there. And so one thing that I struggle with in sales conversations is I go too far in the weeds, and I think one of the things that happens is I'll get asked a question, a technical question about what doesn't matter what it is that I'm selling, and then I'll answer that question and get technical and then end up losing the person. And I think that that's honestly one of the things that ends up hurting me the most in sales conversations is too many words, not keeping it simple and going technical. So how do you, when somebody asks a technical question, how do you respond and give them what they're looking for without just overdoing it?
Yeah. This is probably the number one question I get asked because most salespeople, consultative salespeople, even just consultants, they pride themselves on solving problems. I mean, let's be honest. If you have a prospect in front of you, regardless of their problem or the situation, you're solving that problem in your mind as they're talking, right? I mean, most people do that. You could actually tell them, here's what you need to do right now.
Yeah.
But instead, I like to say you need to stir the problem and not solve the problem. So, quick story. I was on a stage a couple weeks ago talking about how to build attraction from clients and get them to want to say, I want to work with you now. And at the end of the talk, several people lined up to speak to me, and one advisor pointed her finger. She said, Derek, I am so mad at you. And I said, why? I just gave a great talk. Why would you be mad at me? She said, if you had told me this 10 years ago, I could have like 10x'd my business. Well, what she realized was she was solving all the prospects' problems in that visit and thought it was going great. The person shook her hand when they left, and the advisor thought, this is going to be my next best client. And then they ghosted her and she
Mm,
couldn't figure out why. And it was because in the mind of the prospect, you just solved all of their pressing problems. They didn't see a need to keep working with you. So instead, how I would answer your question is you want to stir the problem and not solve it and ask questions like, why is that a concern for you right now? What would happen if you don't solve that problem?
mm,
Why is that piece of equipment so vital to what it is that you want to accomplish? And now you're getting them talking about the bigger picture. And you might say, one of the things people tell us is with this piece of equipment, what often happens is this problem gets solved very, very quickly. But I want to find out more details so that I can make sure that we're recommending the right solution.
mm,
And then you get to the point of, is that something you'd like our help with? And that question is vital because it's a check close. It lets them verbally say out loud, yes, I want your help. And then here's the psychological piece I would introduce. And that is, I know a lot of people use AI for note takers, but people need to see you either typing on your iPad, typing on your laptop, or taking notes on paper. They need to see you writing down so that they see you actively listening
mm.
because people respect people who write down or type the stuff they say. If we're simply just talking back and forth, the prospect can't help but wonder, is this person going to remember everything that we talked about? But when you write stuff down, it's good for you then to recap it because at the end of the closing funnel, I guide people to say, now, as we begin to wrap things up here, you've said the concerns that you'd like my help with are, and then you're going back over your notes. That way they know you just took good notes. You're actually reading your notes off. But here's one thing I would share, and this is something that people should get comfortable with, especially in consumer to consumer selling, in the middle of that presentation and that visit. Now, by the way, I call them visits and not meetings. Meetings you have with your proctologist, which are cold and dark and impersonal, but a visit is warm and inviting. A visit
Mm,
you have with people that you care about. I always call them client visits. So in the visit, I would say, hey, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? And you don't have to answer if you don't want to. And then I would ask them, what mistake are you most fearful of making in this decision? Or
mm,
what's been one of the worst financial mistakes you've made in the past? Now, let me explain that. So I could, in the course of the visit, just ask, hey, Joseph, what would you say is one of the biggest mistakes you've ever made? Pretty good question. It gets you more from the shallow end to kind of the middle part of the pool. But you need to give these key questions what I call pre-meaning. Pre-meaning is you're giving them a preview as to the gravity of the question you're about to ask. So I could say, hey, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made? Or I could say, hey, Joseph, could I ask you a personal question? And by the way, you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. Well, now in your mind, you're like leaning in, well, what's he going to ask?
mm.
You're anticipating the question. And then you say, hey, what is the biggest mistake you've ever made? You see, by giving it pre-meaning, I give it gravity. And the fact that I asked you a personal question and then the fact that you answered it however you did, it automatically deepens our relationship fast. So many people make the fatal mistake of solving all the problems and living in the shallow end of the pool with all their questions, and they don't build rapport and relationship fast. If you want more revenue, you got to build rapport and relationship quickly.
I love it. I could keep talking to you about this all day. I don't want to have a 3 hour. We're not doing Joe Rogan here, right? We don't have 3 hours for the podcast. So this is really, really helpful. And I'm not just saying that you're sharing a lot of things that are connecting with me because they're things that I've struggled with, and that some of those things I'm still working through how to navigate it. So I've got some really good practical takeaways from today. I did want to ask you one more thing that's totally unrelated to the rest of our conversation so far. I know you're passionate about helping teenagers transition into the workplace and transition into adults and into adulthood, and it's a huge problem. My oldest is 12, so I'm like just on the cusp of starting to get into that phase. But I've also run into a lot of young people, and I was in that phase myself, and really struggled for quite a while to figure out what my place was in the world and how to, what I was good at and everything like that. So I'd love to hear from you what things adults can do either for their teens or even for other teens to help them be more successful in transitioning into the workforce.
Well, one of the biggest concerns that teenagers share with me is they feel like adults don't understand them. And let me give you a quick example. Let's say that you're a teenager and you walk into Target or at a Costco or Sam's Club, wherever you go, and you happen to see the parents of a friend that you know, but those parents don't see you yet. And as a teenager, you have a decision to make. Do you A, confidently walk over and say, well, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, it is so nice to see you? Or do you dip over into the potato chip aisle and hope they don't see you?
Mm.
When I ask this to teenagers, 80% say, I am dipping into the chip aisle, Mr. Kinney. And so I ask them why, and they say, well, I don't want to feel embarrassed. I feel nervous. I don't know what to say.
Mm.
And so one of the things that we did, and this came out of a class I taught for 10 years at our kids' school called the Business Club. And so I would teach these students the soft skills, how to look people in the eye, how to have a confident handshake, how to ask open-ended questions to adults. Well, what happened, I didn't see coming. So these students then graduated high school, some went to college, some went right into life. They got married, bought houses, started businesses, etc. And as they come back to me now, they say, Mr. Kinney, that business club stuff really works. I was at REI on Saturday, and my wife and I are in the parking lot walking out, and this guy hops out of a truck, don't even recognize. He said, Mr. Kinney, it's Reed. What you taught me in business club really worked. We've now started 11 businesses. I'm like,
No way.
what the heck?
That's
You
amazing.
know, it was motivating. And so what I learned though was, and again, that's more the outlier story, but students will come back and say, hey, when you taught us to say to an adult, it is so nice to see you, and not say nice to meet you, it helps them avoid embarrassment. Because what if the teenager has already met the adult before and the adult says, oh, no, no, we met before? Well, then the teenager feels embarrassed. So just phrasing, even
Mm,
if they're at a sports game, what can the young person say to the adult to engage them? Because we know that doorways of opportunity go through adults. So all of that being said, I
absolutely.
just took all the stuff that these teenagers said worked as they became adults, and we put this into a course, and it's called simpleteensuccess.com. Simpleteensuccess.com. And so teenagers are giving us great reviews on it. No parent wants to force this on their teenagers, but teenagers themselves, they're binge watching it. They're like in 10-minute sessions, easy to follow, and very, very practical.
I love it. Well, Derek, thank you so much for jumping in and to the show today. Really appreciate it. What are some ways that people can find out more about you? They, on either side, either they want to help their teens transition, or they're like, hey, I want to make more money and sell to higher end clients.
Yeah, I think the biggest burning sensation for your audience is going to be, how do I make more money and attract more high net worth clients? And so the resource there would be successforadvisors.com, successforadvisors.com. There's also a report that we did for people that know they are better than what their current revenue numbers say. There's a website called gettheRaiseYouWant.com, gettheRaiseYouWant.com, a great report that we put out there. Also, you can follow us on LinkedIn and on Instagram at Derek Kinney. And then I mentioned successforadvisors.com. So several ways we want to help you go from middle class to millionaire, whether you're as a consultant, helping your child prepare them for the future, but we want to help you make more money and add more meaning to your life.
Awesome. Love it. Well, thanks so much. I learned a lot today, and I know people who are listening in did as well. So thank you so much. And if you're tuning in, we'll see you all on the next live.